All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're picking up from where we left off the other day. And what we just did is we used the ellipse tool to make a circle. We used the direct selection tool to sort of reshape the circle a little bit, make it a little less perfect circle. And then we used the pen tool to draw a little bump. That little bump is going to represent the little sort of dimple that's in the top of the apple where the stem comes out. And right now, this is all we have to draw. Really quick, I want to go through our layers. If you go through our layer window, right now, you should have 4 layers. You have the background. You have layer 1, which should be all your paintbrush marks. You should have a layer that's called shape 1. And shape 1 is going to be, it's getting a little slow here, but shape 1 is going to be the outside shape of your apple. And then shape 2, which should be that little smiley face that we created. All right. Now what we're going to do is we all should be on layer 1. We're going to create a new layer. And that's that button right beneath, over here, next to what looks like the waste paper basket. That's delete. Next to it is new layer. It looks like a square with the little corner folded up on it. I'm going to click that. And now what should pop up is something called layer 2. And that should be completely blank. I'm going to double click on the word layer 2. Right on the word itself. When I double click on it, that gives me the ability to change the name of it. I'm going to name this layer white. If you double click on any other area except for the word, you're going to get a different thing. And that option is called layer style. And we don't want that. So if that pops up, just hit the X, go back, double click on the actual word that says layer 2. And again, we're going to rename that white. So this is the layer we're going to start painting on. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint the white parts of this apple. Now, I purposely gave you this on a gray piece of paper so that essentially all the gray of the apple would be just the gray on our base. So what we're going to do is we're going to first paint the white and the black and make a nice looking black and white apple. To do that, first things first, we have to pick our color. I'm going to go to my color picker, which we used earlier. I'm going to click on it. And I could just drag it all the way to the top corner. If I want, I could also just click directly on the little white square that's on my little picture. It doesn't matter. Either way, but I want pure white. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to switch over to my paintbrush. I switch over to my paintbrush. We already know how to paint. And you can see as you click and drag, the paint just comes out of it. Control Z to undo. We want to be able to use the paintbrush, not so much like a perfect pen, but a little bit more, or like a marker, but a little bit more like an airbrush, which means we want to develop like a softer edge to it. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the top of my brush selection area, and I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to bring the hardness down to something in the 20s. 0% is a very soft brush. I don't think we need it that soft. I'll tell you, you don't have to match my numbers exactly, but something inside 20 to 29 is totally fine. And you can go ahead and make a little mark there. All right, so you can see that's a nice soft brush. Still, when I'm working with this thing, it comes out as really bright white. And that's not exactly an easy way to shade this thing. I don't want to have to shade with multiple layers of gray. So beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and change a couple of the other options on this brush. The first thing I'm going to change is the opacity. The opacity is right up top over here, and it's at 100%. I'm going to paint a little bit at 100%. And if I go ahead and then change it now to 50%, or something close, you'll see that automatically that light comes out not as bright. Because I can kind of see through this a little bit. It's making my color a little bit see-through. If I end up painting over that same color a bunch of times, you could see that it gets brighter and brighter and brighter because I'm building up different layers of white on top of one another. So it's an easy way for me to change this thing to make different shades of gray. Another thing I can do is lower the flow. The flow right now is at 100%. We're going to lower the flow a little bit, and you're going to see the same thing happens. What does that mean? It means that if this was like a spray paint can, it means that the amount of paint coming out would come out a lot less, which might take you longer to paint, but it's going to give you a little bit more control over it. And you can see you can go over an area over and over again to make it a little bit brighter. What I'm going to tell you to do is that you should change your opacity to something around 50%. Doesn't need to be exactly by the numbers. You know, if you're at like 46 or 53 or whatever, that's fine. Just around 50% is fine. For the flow, we're going to change the flow to something in the 20s. Again, it's not important that you get the exact percentage out, but anything between 20 and sort of 30 is fine. So what you're going to see is you got a nice light paintbrush to work with. And that's going to be helpful for us to make our different shades of gray. I'm going to undo all this other stuff up top because I don't really need it. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of it. And now I've got my opacity set at around 50. I got my flow set at about 26. I've got my hardness set in somewhere around the 20s. Size of my brush, to get started, I want to work with a little bit bigger brush. I like to work with a big brush first and then a smaller one. So for the size for me, I'm going to take and change it to around 75. You don't have to be exactly the same size as me, but you want to get close. Now what we're going to do now with this brush is we could start kind of using this to shade my apple. We got a bright side and we got a dark side. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to shade, and I'm going to keep going over and clicking and keep going over the brightest part. So I have a nice bright section right over here around the edge, and then it sort of fades to gray in the middle. The only issue here is that while I'm painting this, I have a lot of stuff that's happening over here that I don't really need. I'm going to have to clean this stuff up later on. So instead of doing it the way I just showed you, before we start painting, we're going to select an area. That's the reason we drew shape 1 and shape 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my layer window, and I'm going to click on shape 1. And again, shape 1 should highlight and be the outline of your apple. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my toolbar, and I'm going to look for something called the magic wand. The magic wand should be one of the third or fourth tools up from the top. It looks like a little stick with a sort of explosion on the end of it, kind of like a sparkler. If you can't find it, it should be right up over here, but you could always press the letter W to find it. So if for some reason it is not selected, you can always hit W. That will highlight the area it's hiding in, and then you could switch over to the magic wand. When you have the magic wand, what you want to do is you want to go over to shape 1, and again, it should be highlighted blue, and you want to just click anywhere inside that blue circle. When you do that, you're going to see that all of a sudden there's this outline, and that outline is made with sort of a dashed line. That's good. Once we've selected that area, and that area is highlighted like that, then we're going to go back to our layers window and click on white. Now I'm going to go switch over to my brush, and you're going to notice when I start painting, it's only going to paint inside the area that's been selected. What I can do is I can go in and I can start painting the bright part of my apple with my nice large brush. And everything that I'm doing is going to stay inside the selected area. I've got a little bit of lightness on this side. I'll just touch the brush along the edge, and again, it's only going to paint where I've selected. I've got another little highlight over here. I think what I'll do is make my brush a little bit smaller. Maybe something in the 20s. And I will attempt to lighten up that little spot. I will make my brush a little smaller and make a really bright little reflection. And that, my friends, is painting the white area. Once I'm done with that, I can go ahead and file save as a PSD. And then again, take a screenshot of my work. I want to be able to see the actual work itself, and I want to see your layers. That picture that you took will be the one that you submit for this part of the project. I'm going to go ahead